audience ever to see it. You guys are, wow, that's really sweet.
That Trent Reznor song that we just heard over the credits, he wrote that just for this film.
Yeah, so Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails, you can kind of feel the Nine Inch Nails over the Meat Guy get on that track. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross won the Oscar for Social Network, and they do all of David Fincher's films. And I asked them to do this film basically for free, and they both believed in climate change as being one of their issues that they really care about. And they said, well, we can't score the whole movie, but what if we get like an all-star group and then we oversee it? And they got Gustavo Santaolalla, who's won 2 Academy Awards for Babel and Brokeback Mountain, and this band from London, from Scotland called Mogwai. And they would each write tracks and then compose over each other's tracks. And I love music and film, and for me as a director, it's one of the most important elements of a film. And it was a pleasure to work with Trent. He never wrote a song for a movie before, and this meant a lot to him. So that's why we let it play for 6 minutes at the end.
So last night, some of the people who were in the film were at the screenings, and the scientists and so forth. Can you talk about what their reactions to the film were? Yeah,
well, I think Leo's other film was called The 11th Hour, and The 11th Hour was really just about a lot of scientists talking about the science and how basically screwed we are if we don't do something about it. And Piers Sellers, who's this beautiful man from NASA who has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, basically starts his scene saying, you know, scientists haven't done a very good job at communicating the science. And these are like, you know, these are people, you know, Lindsay and Michael Mann and Jeremy Jackson, and these are people that were all here last night. And they, I think, had one of the most amazing nights of their life, because they got to like hang out in a cinema and watch their science being communicated in a very kind of clear way with, you know, with Leo. And that was our goal, was to make these scientists really palatable and make the science very clear to everyone. Even though you probably know a lot of this stuff you saw, but hopefully it was presented in a different way. And they, I think they really were grateful that the film was kind of different than most of the talking head films that they've appeared in, because a lot of them have been in other films. But this was a very different experience. And we made a conscious effort, Leo and I, not to do talking heads, or it's just like, you know, where it was more like a conversation. So it was, I think they were really, really jazzed, and now they want to go to every screening.
I didn't see him get up at 9:30 this morning.
Well, yeah, we had a late one last night. They weren't scientists last night. They were animals. They're actually scientists or animals.
Let's take some questions. Is that you waving with your phone there?
There was a eureka moment when you talked about turning global leaders into global followers. I think that's the way to go. That was really intuitive there.
That was the kind of eureka moment for us. The Republican professor from Harvard, Mankiw, really makes that clear. And I think that kind of moved Leo and I to a different point of view. And that's something that we're really aiming to do with this film, is have people start to write to their Congress and to their senators. And the whole reason that we wanted it out, as I said before the election, is to try to put leaders in that care about this. In Canada, you had a prime minister that was one of the worst possible people for the climate, Stephen Harper, that, you know, was sort of a denialist, and he promised to say that the Paris Climate Accord, if he was in office, he wasn't gonna sign it. And thank goodness he's out of office, and you have another prime minister that really cares and really is involved and really wants to make climate change on top of his agenda. So let's hope Trudeau continues this trajectory that he's saying. And this is a lot of positive things have happened since we started making this film, and that was certainly one of them. So we're really grateful that that your country has gotten a change in leadership, and someone that really believes in this. And Vancouver's become Vancouver has a carbon tax, and it's become very successful. And they've taken money from one place, like Mankiw says, and they put it into another. I mean, Mankiw did a whole other scene, I could have put it in the movie, about Vancouver and how it's becoming one of the greenest cities, and how the carbon tax is not only greening the city, but it's actually putting money toward other municipal and other education and other things that are quite good. So it's a good example of how a carbon tax can work. That'll be the sequel.
All right, question in the balcony, front row.
Just picking up on what you just said, myself and my friend are from Vancouver, and you did talk about cap and trade at the moment, focused mostly on carbon tax, and I was just curious if that was a decision, maybe you just don't believe in cap and trade, and that's totally legitimate. Because the thing about the carbon tax, and in Vancouver in particular,
You see, you talk about cap and trade and people just leave. That was the problem.
That's true, it's complicated, but carbon tax, poor people are affected first, and it's true in the long run, things can change, but when a low-income person can't afford the gas for their car to get to their crappy job, but a rich person can buy a Prius, cap and trade isn't working entirely.
Right, but the idea is that the poor people pay less taxes in other areas of their life.
But that doesn't pay for their gas tomorrow.
Right. Well, it might. I mean, it depends. I mean, cap and trade and carbon tax, they're very similar too in a lot of ways. And the other challenge with this film is it's such a big issue, and we could have made a whole film on carbon tax and cap and trade and subsidies as well. So what our goal was, and I don't want to get into the specifics of cap and trade and carbon tax, but no, it's a good question. It really is. But the goal of the film really is to get the general world, the general public, understanding that this issue is the most important thing that we will ultimately face, and that we are facing, and that we try to just kind of cover a lot of ground, but do it in a palatable way so that, that's your thing. Your thing is cap and trade and carbon tax, and actually, can I just say one thing? There's a person in the audience that co-created this app where we said at the end of the film that we paid our own carbon tax, the voluntary carbon tax, and he can maybe talk a little bit about cap and trade and carbon tax, but we're hoping that people will download the app once it goes live October 20th, and you will pay a voluntary carbon tax, which will be a tax deduction towards reforestation. And maybe Daniel, this is Daniel Nadler, maybe you could talk 2 seconds about the app and what it's going to do.
Yeah, thanks, Fisher. So, someone mentioned in the audience the eureka moment. When Fisher first showed me this film, I had the same eureka moment. I have a day job, I run a pretty big software company, and Fisher and I started talking about what are some ways that we can funnel all of the energy and goodwill that will be generated by this film into actual positive action. And what Professor Mankey was saying around the middle of the film, to me, struck me as that's quite different, that's quite new in this film. Somebody actually proposing an economic solution and not just stop driving your car, but how do you have what you do in your life reflect the true cost to the environment. So we said we'd run this as an experiment, which is if we give people the means via software, in this case, to actually account for their impact on the environment in the same way that at the end of the year you do your taxes to the government. We're going to create software that allows people to do their taxes to the planet and see how many people do it. And we think that enough people will do it that it will make quite a gesture and a signal to the elected officials and show that there are a lot of people who are willing to voluntarily opt in to properly accounting their impact on the planet, just as the film has with its own production. So that's the idea. It's going to be launched in conjunction with the wide release of the film.
Yeah, that's a whole other issue, and actually Leo's foundation is sponsoring, is actually funding another film about the Dakota Pipeline. And you can't cover everything. I can't tell you who we cut out of this film. President Clinton, Michael Bloomberg, Sergey Brin, Naomi Klein. I mean, we interviewed amazing people, and hopefully, I went to Ecuador and filmed in the Amazon and got malaria. None of that's in the film. Hopefully there'll be a lot of more components to this, and the Dakota Pipeline is an important issue.
All right, the white shirt here.
I just wondered if you could comment on the experience you've had in making this film, anything on or off camera that you found particularly profound. Obviously, there were many profound experiences.
Yeah, the film was, it was a crazy journey because Leo was shooting The Revenant for a year while we were shooting, and we had to schedule certain shoots around him. The palm oil thing really blew me away. I had no idea. I mean, you read about it, I saw Vice episodes and, you know, in our research, but to actually be there and see the destruction, and to be honest, we also almost, you know, we had a very hairy helicopter ride where you see in the film where Leo goes, this is scary and you can't see anything. There were mountains around us, and there was a moment where I was very worried that we weren't going to make it. Actually, you can see in the dailies where I'm going, oh my fucking God! You know, it was terrifying. But the amount of carbon that the burning there, and these companies, the profits that they're reaping, and they don't go to the local people. Like, the locals don't make the money, you know. The tar sands, it's not the local people. It's shipped in, you know. The local people are paying $7, $8 for a loaf of bread to be shipped in. So the local people do not benefit from what's going on. I mean, you know that, but really to see that, that was pretty horrifying. And when Leo and Jason Box take that tube in Greenland, and you see that it's 50 feet of melt in 5 years, you hear about it, but to see it, and I thought, like, that's the best illustration of the melt of Greenland. I mean, you could see Leo's face when he was like, you know, that was real. I mean, we were all really shocked. And that glacier melting while we were going by. So if that happened just as we were going by, I mean, our cameraman, Anthony Rossi, was hanging out of the helicopter just filming, and then we saw that, and we were like, I mean, to be right on top of that, it's like, you feel it in your gut, like, things are changing fast. And then Pierre saying that, you know, the original predictions from NASA were like 100 years, 150 years from now. It's, you know, Piers is like, no, we're talking 20, 30 years that Oklahoma will be the Dust Bowl again. You know, like, that stuff was like, oh my God. But the good news is that we were also shocked that Elon Musk is saying, you know, 100 gigafactories, which is it's a little bit deceiving. Like, one of those factories is huge, and Tesla is still building the first one. That wasn't even finished. We were like the first people ever to film in there, but he says 100 could, you know, save the world, but that's a huge tall order. That's not like just going, we're going to build 100 buildings. It's, you know, you see how large they are. But also the prices of solar, the prices of wind, the consciousness of all you people to come to this movie. There's something happening, and I've done about 4 of these kind of films, environmental films, but to have Leonardo as the messenger is the difference here. And hopefully, you know, his voice will actually, I'll make a movie that people will see, more people will see, that will engage, because it is about collective action, and, you know, as Naomi Klein says in her book, you know, it's about changing the way we all think and get power.
Time for one more quick question. Who's got one? No? Thank you.
Hi, great film. My question is there someone that you wish you would have interviewed for the film that you didn't get a chance to?
Is there anyone you wanted to interview and couldn't for the film?
Well, the only people we were rejected from were Charles and David Koch. We wanted to James Inhofe, the senator. We really wanted to interview him and try to get, you know, his point of view. And actually, we wanted to interview Al Gore, but he's making, I think, his own film. And he said, oh, I love you, Leo, but I'm going to make my own thing. But, you know, he let us film him, and he was super cool and all that. Those were really the people that we wanted to interview, that we tried. And, you know, it's great. I don't know how you guys felt, if you got angry listening to James Inhofe, but it's incredible that he's the head of the Environmental Committee of the United States. And that he may be the only one that actually doesn't believe. He actually maybe doesn't believe it. I mean, he may be that clueless that he doesn't believe it. I mean, the Koch brothers know what's happening, and the Koch brothers. Mankiw and I had a fight last night, the professor from Harvard. He's like, last night I said, well, the Koch brothers just do it for money. He's like, they don't just do it for money. They do it because They don't want anyone telling them what to do. They believe in those values. Even if it will harm people, that's not the way they think. So I think he's right. They're hardcore libertarians, and they are profiting tremendously, as you see. And they are, you know, and now we have the Supreme Court that has this thing called Citizens United, which is allowing corporations to put as much money into the political system as possible. They were behind that getting passed. And then they put $900 million in the last election. So, you know, we didn't get to interview them.
You are the second audience in the world to see Before the Flood. It's going to be going out to the world via National Geographic on October 30th. I thank you very much for coming. I hope you get to see more great documentaries this week.